what are the particular principles of each of the parties? What are the particular principles of each of the candidates? And as a Christian, how do I evaluate those? And so one of the things that I thought was really interesting is whenever you get to a particular opportunity to look at the views and the values expressed from different candidates. And one of the things that I found that I thought was super helpful was in the Virginia governor's race. You had a Republican and a Democrat running for governor, and they will take these particular, candidate fact sheets, and they will lay out the particular issues for you. And the candidates will express their opinion. And a lot of the times that those opinions aren't just the personalities of the candidates, right, but they're the positions of the parties that they represent. And so where do Republicans stand on these particular issues? Where do Democrats stand on these particular issues? Not just where the two candidates stand, because the two candidates have to fit into those particular camps, right, the Republican and the Democrat camp. And I was really interested in the Virginia governor's one because not only were there, 15 different issues on this thing, and if you want to go find this online, you can probably look it up and find it, right? millionvoices.org. This is where this one came from. But we've got it up on the screen for you as well to take a look at. I was really interested in some of the issues that have been political issues in the past where, right, let's say the issue of abortion, right? I remember, 20 years ago, the issue of abortion really was about when, right, was a person legally allowed to have an abortion. And so we were debating over trimesters, and you were debating over late-term abortions and all the different things, that were happening. And I'm just going to tell you, as you look at this, the issue of abortion isn't about that anymore. On this particular questionnaire, the way that it's phrased is babies born alive. Okay, and I need to. Right? I don't know what you're paying attention to. I don't know if you're driving in your car or you're on the treadmill, right? But I need you to pause for a second and listen to this, okay? There's going to be a number of questions from immigration to DOGE cuts to parental rights to criminal justice reform, right? Keeping men out of women's spaces in sports, right? So we're just walking down this particular issue, but this is the one that really, really, really caught my attention. Babies born alive. It says, babies born alive. Do you as a candidate, here's the question given to them. Do you as a candidate require medical care for babies who survive abortion? Okay, so just think about that for a second. Okay, we're not talking about the issue of abortion, right? And whether a mother can go have an abortion before that child is born. What it's saying is if that happens and yet that baby is born alive, so now you have a live child, okay? You have a baby who's born alive. Should you require that medical care and attention be given to that child who is alive? Okay, so here's the thing. What happens if you don't? Let's just wrestle with this, right? What happens if you don't? What happens if that child who's born alive is not given medical care and attention? That child's going to die, right? Allowing a live person to die. Now, I would say that abortion is killing, right, a live person anyway. Okay, but some people, are going to parse that and say, well, they're not born yet. Okay, well, here in this particular scenario, they're now born, right? They're alive, right? They're out of the womb. The two candidates are asked, right? The Republican and Democrat candidate are asked, right? Do you require medical care for babies who are born alive, right? The Republican candidate in this one said yes, right? I would say that government should say doctor, nurse, medical professional, right? You are required to give professional care, medical care to that child who's born alive. Where the Democrat candidate in this one, right, Spanberger, who's the one who won. Okay, so that's why this is important, right? This particular person has won the office of governor, which means that now they're going to take these particular principles, right, and place them in. So now government has power to enforce these. So you might say, okay, what does that mean? It means, right, she said, no, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that a child who's born alive should be given medical care, that should be a requirement. Okay, think about that. Think about that. Abortion is no longer about the child in the womb and whether we're protecting that particular life. It's now even the child outside the womb. How far does that go then, right? There's the question, right? You may be thinking, right, slippery slope arguments. Okay, well, they're slippery slope arguments because if you start down a slippery slope, where do you stop? Okay, and that's one of the things that we've been talking about of abortion for years, right? If that child is not alive in the womb, is it alive, right, 6 inches later when it's born, when it's come out of the birth canal? And I would say that, most people that I know would be like, well, yes, once it's born, it's a real life. No, not here, not in New Jersey, or not in Virginia, right? Because the Virginia governor is saying, no, I would not require. If I were governor, I would not require that. And the people went to the ballot box and voted for this person with these principles to be held in a public office to now create laws that have the force of government behind them. Right? Let me just run down this real quick. Right? Immigration. Do you support sanctuary policies and mass amnesty? Right? What does that mean? It means anybody who's in the United States, right, basically making them citizens so that they can vote. Okay? How did they get here? Do they have the views and values that make America great? Right? Or does it matter, right, how they got here? Right? Can we just give mass amnesty and say, hey, listen, everybody's a citizen? And with citizenship comes rights and responsibilities. Okay? So, right, Republican would say no, right? Not everybody who comes into the United States, right, in ways that are not legal and are not benefiting this country should have a right to vote. And yet the Democrats here in Virginia, right, Spanberger said yes, right? She would pass mass amnesty. Just give the right to vote to whomever. Okay. Doge cuts, right? Do we want government accountability? Do we want to see where our money is going from a governmental standpoint? The Republican in this one said yes. I think we need to have something like Doge, something like a department, right, of government efficiency, looking at where our money is being spent. Democrats said no, right? That shouldn't be an issue at all. Parental rights, we talked about this earlier, right? Defer to parents on gender and sexual ideology. So whose right is it to instruct your children in their gender and sexuality as God has designed? Is it your right as a parent, or is it the government's right to instruct? So if they want to teach your child something different, and understand, we're not talking about a high school. We're not talking about a middle school. We're talking about a gender and sexuality ideology that has gotten into kindergarten, first grade, second grade, right? And so the question was asked, whose right is it? Is the parents' right? Republicans said yes, parents' right. Democrats said no. So it's the right of the state. It's the right of the school to instruct children on these particular issues. Keeping men, as we're going in there, keeping men out of women's spaces in sports. Right? Should men be allowed to compete? Should biological men be allowed to compete against women? Should biological men be allowed to go into women's locker rooms, into women's bathrooms? Republicans said no. Democrats said yes. Right? We keep on going. Just an amazing thing as you go through here. School choice, right? Who's allowing, who's dictating where your children have a right to go to school and where that money is? It's your money. It's your children. Should you have an opportunity to allow your money to pay for the education of your child? Or should your money only go to the state, and the state is the one who then dictates where that money goes? Republicans said school choice, right? Parents should have a right to not only send their kids to whatever school they want, whatever, if they want to go to a public school, if they want to go to a private school, right? That should be the choice of the parents. And, right, they should have the resources that are theirs, right, should follow that particular child. And Democrats said no. Religious freedom. I thought this was a fascinating one. And just how they even termed it, right? On here it says religious freedom, mutual respect and tolerance for religious views. Okay. Democrats said no, right? There should not be, so think about this. They said no, right? It's near the bottom. It's the second one to the bottom. It says no. We should not be respecting religious freedom and tolerance for other religious views, right? Here, think about this. From a government standpoint, we're not talking about a personal standpoint, right? We're not talking about Dan Panetti and somebody else, right? I'm Christian, you're something else. Should I respect you personally? That's not what it's asking. It's asking, should the government protect different views and values, right, equally across the board? And they're saying, no, the government should not. So which ones are they not going to respect? And here's the thing, maybe it's yours, right? Maybe your religious views and values are the ones that the government, using its particular force, is going to say, no, you can't worship that way. You can't raise your children with those particular views and values. You can't, right? We always think about maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's somebody else's religious views and values that the government will be intolerant towards, right? But what if it's your views and values that they're intolerant towards? So that's a very, very interesting list of issues, right? And that's why it's so important when we think about these particular issues. And I want you to see the difference, right? The red, right, Republicans, the blue Democrats. I want you to see the difference in understanding that the parties, not just the people, right, but the parties have different views on these different principles. And you need to understand, when you put that party into power, right, that party is going to take these particular policies and make them law. Okay, that's why we're voting on these things, right? We're saying these things are important. It's not just the personality. It's not just, hey, I like this person, right? Or this person is going to do a good job in office, right? It's this person is going to represent this particular party and these particular principles.